What? You want to fight crime? Let's get dangerous.
And yes, it is. It is that time on a Saturday that we come to you live from wherever I am. Where am I at? I'm not going to tell you where that is, but it is time for another episode of From the Desk of a Small Press Publisher. I am Joe D. McPhee here, the host of the show here, and it's that time again to get to the nitty gritty. We got some new comic book pickups for the week. We got, well, I had a recommendation here, but we're going to probably curtail that. We got some accountability to do, and we got the topic that you guys picked this week here. You guys picked the topic this week. We're going to talk about it, and I do have some things to say about it here, but nevertheless here. And there's Tori. Yep. No, well, not exactly. It's not exactly my house, but close enough. But nevertheless here, it is what it is. But and what I was referring to is Tori here saying live from your house. No, it'd be nice if I could say live from my house. It's Saturday night. No, but seriously though. But we do have to do our due diligence here with our business end of things here, such as letting you know about Stupid O'Clock. If we get into the second hour of this show here, happens at 11 p.m. Eastern, 1 hour in. Then it followed up by Last Man Standing at 1 a.m. Eastern. Then you get a respite until Monday, until you have Nicholas Tucker at Nevermind the Furthermore at 10 a.m. And then we are still doing Comic Book Spectrum on Thursday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern here. And I'm going to go back to the regular screen first because I'm going to see. I was like, yeah, I call it your house. Yep. But it is what it is for right now. We're ready. We're ready to get into things here. So without further ado, at first I wasn't going to go right into it because I saw we had extra comics, but it is that time once again during the week that we have new comic book pickups. So what we got for new comic book pickups is just a little, not too many. I'm looking at seven issues of one, which is going to make a return visit here in our topic here. First off, we got Good Girl Art Quarterly from AC Comics number 9. That came in the mail today. Like I said, one of these is going to make a reappearance here. Then we got Dazzler number 10. I think this is like the beginnings where she actually became like the hero of Galactus here. And then we got one of my Radio Shack Science Fair books here. I think this is an extra copy of issue number 3 or 5. I can't remember the actual numbering on it. Then we got Spider-Woman number 45 and 15. And then one of my favorites, Action Comics 592. And if you don't know about 592, too bad. I'm tired of telling you guys about it here. And the last one is another copy of issue number 10 of Dazzler here. So that was new comic book pickups for the week here. Now, one of the things that I was going to start here, starting on this show, is one recommendation, per show of something that I think is worthwhile. And at first I was going to hold off on it, but now since I'm thinking about it, it's like I might as well go ahead and do it full bore here. And that is something that I'm planning to get graded here. And this is, it's not that hard to find, but it is something that at least I dig it. My comic book recommendation here is Inhumans #1. So this is the book that I'm planning to get graded soon here. Another one of the books that's in a mini bin that's somewhere over there of books that I'm going to eventually send either to CGC or CBCS here. So Inhumans #1 is one of those books that I was like, you know what? This is a nice, good, classic book that needs to be preserved here. Am I speculating on it? Not really. It's just something that I think is worthwhile. Might not be worth all that much to you, but it is at least worthwhile to me here. Great story behind this very first issue here. And it's like Black Bolt versus Black Star from Fantastic Four fame. So it is worthwhile in that aspect here. So that is the recommendation for the week here. So hopefully you guys enjoy that here. So on that note, we're not going to get into the topic just as of yet. I want more people to show up here because it is your topic that you picked here, not mine. So accountability wise, if you paid attention to my Instagram, we finally finished up one of the chapters for for part of the anthology stories that I have for Legends of the Giantess Slayer. That story took quite a bit of time to really flesh out because it's a prequel. It's not the actual beginning of the story. It's kind of leads you into what really goes on behind the scenes here before we really get into the nitty gritty to introduce the story, the main character that's going to be there for the majority of it, and some of the, if I could say, victims that could happen, victims that are going to pop up and everything to that magnitude here. It's a weird attempt on a thriller more so than anything, because like I said, I'm not a big fan of horror, but I think I could write a thriller pretty okay. I'm not trying to go for blood and guts or anything like that. I just want something that is more, if I could say, in the aspects of something that's more chilling, somewhat realistic, chilling, but not getting into like the ultra violent or gory aspect of things here. And it's more cerebral than anything else. So I think I could pull this particular story off being told in 6-page snippets. And in doing so, like the first chapter, the prequel chapter, was 4 6-page snippets. So technically it is a 24-page comic book, but I did it in 6 pages for it could last, for it could be featured in 4 issues of Legends of the Giantess Slayer. So like I said, my whole goal here is, as I tell these stories, we're doing it in smaller snippets to really pad out the issues per se here. So Legends of the Giantess Slayer on average would have somewhere between 4 to 5 stories per book. I know the first story is always kind of like the college lecture, but making certain that stays at least for like the first 5 to 10 issues. But that might go away depending on if I run out of topics to talk about to kind of get you acclimated to where things are going here. And then the other stories that I really want to tell in this series are broken down into anywhere between 6 to 8 page snippets. So on average, like I said, it's going to be either like somewhere between 4 to 5 parts, 4 or 5 different stories in each book here. So that's going to be a cool thing in a nutshell here. So as of right now, it looks like we only got a few people here. So I guess we're going to go ahead and start talking about the main topic, because the sooner we get to it, I think the more we're going to get people into the aspect of it here. But unless you guys got something else you want to talk about beforehand. Amazonia 8 still going to happen here. That's still going to happen. I'm going to clean off this back table here and start drawing very, very soon here. Like I said before, I have my Bristol boards right here. My Bristol boards are right here. So I'm not, when I say that, I'm not lollygagging per se. It's just more along the lines. I have to sit down. I got my drafting tape. I got my Bristol boards all ready to go. I just have to make time, out of life to just sit down, draw it. Why? Because the script is already done. Like I said, I thought ahead. So, I'm already got like 10 to 12 issues already scripted out. Issue 8 is just ready to go. I just have to just sit down with the script, just start drawing. Primetime Saturday Night 6, which is going to feature Voluma, another new wrestler in the series here, will be started shortly as well. What I'm in the process of doing accountability wise is Legends 101, the third class, and that's going to feature a particular topic in the sub genre of what we're working in. And that third lecture topic is going to cover a couple of things that some people might not know about, but it's going to be worthwhile in the long run here. But that's enough talking about the production side of everything. I know everybody wants me to talk about, well, why are tits and ass books so, if I can say, why do they lack creativity and lacks, sexiness nowadays? Because it's being done too often, for one. But we have to look at the overall history. We have to look at some of the other things. And then I have a very critical aspect of critical critique about TNA books, especially for the way society is. I think we have gotten to the point that we have grown out of one particular aspect that I really wish people would start paying more and more attention to. But like I stated before, the more you call towards that, the more you bring out that one aspect, the more people want to go into that whole argument. It's like, oh, blah 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 diversity, blah 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 wokeness, blah blah. It's like, no, it's not nothing about that. It's just, like I said before, to me it comes off as lack of creativity, because the world is just not exactly how certain things, the way that people portray it half of the time here. But nevertheless, for those who don't know what TNA comics are, we talk about tits and ass books, which means that those books that have always have sexy covers or racy covers or things that borderlines into the sexuality aspect of the characters on the covers being the main selling point for the series. One of the first ones that always comes to mind is Vamp Blade. And I forgot what the other one, not Vampy, but I can't think of the other one by Action Labs. Zombie Tramp. Things like that. It gets it to that point where it's like, oh, it's more of the sexuality of the character that's selling the book than the story that's being told. And that's never a good thing, unless that's the whole purpose of the book. The whole purpose of the book is the fact that this person is X, Y, and Z. And if you're really going for that really true adult audience, I get it. Now, mind you, when I brought this topic out to the audience from the Death of Small Press Publisher, I wanted to make certain that they're not getting this construed by some of the things that we talked about in those individual chats, like good girl art, things like Dave Stevens, and what I was showing here. This would be considered a good girl art type of cover. Those actually have purposes to kind of tell the story, but yet at the same time not really take away from what's really going on in the book. You know, like I said, I mentioned Dave Stevens, so I got my Johnny Quest #5 here. So that's, you know, one of the more, if I could say, known good girl arts from Dave Stevens outside of like Alien Worlds books that he did per se. And it doesn't take away from the fact that this book is about Johnny Quest's adventure here. It just so happens that Jade here, I believe, is a character that's featured prominently on there that brings a different aspect to that book here. And it looks like Tori is saying something here. Yeah, there will always be a subset that just wants TNA, and then there's another set that just wants TNA with substance. And that's the thing. It's not about TNA or TNA with substance here. If I really got to my critique about it, if you're going to do TNA, do it right. And the reason why I'm going through all these examples here, and I want to see if you catch the thing that I'm seeing here. Now, I know I showed these before here, so in a way, I'm going to do this one like so. I'm going to do that one like so, because that one, because I'm on Twitch, I have to do that. These are actual metal, and the way, again, this was like late night, and the way they were presented to me over whatnot, and like I said, they're metal. I actually thought that this was a actual, exclusive Wonder Woman book, but no, it's not. It's an art book. It's somebody's art book. So TNA selling somebody's art. But again, I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm wondering if you could get my critique. Now, this is good girl art. This is not that, but again, this is still kind of like the same thing here. This is not necessarily overly sexy, but I'm just getting to the point of maybe there's a theme that people are missing here that I instantly caught. And people are trying to not pay much attention to it as a whole here. Yeah, that's another Lady Death here. So, those are examples here. And I'm going to talk about, some of these examples in more in depth in a second here. But did you catch the theme that I saw that I kind of always scratch my head and wonder, oh, this is one of the reasons why everybody wants to kind of shut me down when we bring this up here. Let me see. Okay, so we got Parallax here. Ugh, I hate when they do that. All these girls need to eat. Some of them do. Some of them do. But technically, all the women that's being shown here are of one nationality. And that's what grinds my gears about TNA. And if you're going to do TNA, there are a plethora of beautiful women out there. A plethora that can be created from the creator's mindset and from the artist's mindset. Everybody in the world does not fit into the same nationality, or if you get into it, the same aspect of, if I could say, colorism that is always portrayed by the artist or the creator, which gets me, really gets my gears grinding, because it's like when you look at stories that's being told, you're forcing your reader to suspend belief long enough to understand that the world you created it's really a certain way. And what really grinds my gears more so that I see a lot more of TNA service here for is this character right here. Technically, she's supposed to be a Martian. Deja Thoris is a princess of Mars. But yet, that's the depiction. So I get it. Who to say what an alien may or may not look like? I get that aspect. I get that creative aspect, but this is the reason why I said some of the stuff with TNA is lazy. People have done sexy aspects of Starfire. Now, mind you, there was 2 Starfires in the DC universe. We did not always start with the orange skin Starfire. Do you know what nationality the original Starfire was before we got orange skin Starfire? And then after we got orange skin Starfire and she became popular, and then they did the Titans TV series on Max, people got upset because the orange skinned alien was being portrayed by an African American. And you're up here asking me why that critique about nationality is so important when it comes to TNA and representation. No, I'm not going to get ultra woke or anything like that. I'm critical of that because the world is not, monolithic in that aspect. There's many different type of people out there, many different nationalities. But the majority of stories that's being told that focuses solely on TNA focuses mainly in the one mindset for that nationality. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying we need variety. You can't always have Rocky Road when there's strawberry and Neapolitan and all the all the mint chocolate chip and butter pecan and praline and cream out there. It just doesn't work. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And yeah, it's well known that black girls and Latinos are curvier than white women. Yeah, Nubia and Yarl for yep. Again, you guys are saying this. You guys are actually saying this. I'm not picking a fight. I'm not saying that creators don't know what they're doing here. Again, the market is dictated by what's currently selling. That's what's selling. I'm not I'm not going against the grain as far as that is concerned. But I want people to stop and think for a second. Why is it so much of a harder sell for TNA if the cover person was Latino or Asian or African? And if they were one of those, and this is where the colorism comes in, the lighter the skin, the more relatable that they are. I was like, that's kind of weird when it comes to the TNA aspect of it. Now, mind you, I deal with books all the time. Even the books that I write have multiple ethnicities up in it. I try to make my world kind of similar to what we lived in, like how Marvel says, like, the world that we create in Marvel is like the world that you look out the window and exactly like that. And I have to go back to Marvel. It's like, yeah, tell me, it's like if I lived in the 1960s, right? If I looked out my window, it's like, no, it's like when I look out my window in the 1960s, most likely I would still be in a type of neighborhood that I am in here. But there is a dominant ethnicity that pretty much kind of governs the rest of the aspect here. It doesn't necessarily represent the world I see outside. It might be a snippet, but it does not always guarantee that it's the same world. Now, modern Marvel, I honestly believe they got the wrong type of writers because they're getting more towards that aspect, but at the same time, they're just browbeating everybody. And I just don't like the aspect of being browbeating too. Just tell me a good story. Tell me a good story. Let me make up my own mind. If you especially try to make a political point or a point about humanity, let the story tell the lesson. Let me make up my own mind. Don't preach to me. Don't you as a writer preach to me as how I'm supposed to feel about it. Let me make up my own mind. Tell it through the characters here. Tell it through the actual events. People will appreciate that. People will appreciate the fact that you don't assault their intelligence in the bigger scheme of things here. And mind you, getting back to the whole TNA thing here, most TNA books are supposed to be fun. And the most TNA books that I actually enjoy the most are the really adult ones here because they're not meant to be taken seriously. However, we got books like Vampirella as per se here. Like this is the photo cover of Vampirella Strikes from Harris Comics here. This is really supposed to be like kind of like a teaser to get people interested in it, the whole sex appeal type deal, yada, 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 yada. Do I expect the book to be kind of like this? No. Why? Because I read, have read Vampirella is not like that as a whole here. Deja Thors to me is kind of like it's always misleading because they always want to do covers like this, but she's part of a war. She's part warrior at times. She can do other things just outside of just sitting here being sexy on the cover, and they never show that here. Again, they really don't do that to Red. Well, actually, since Dynamite has it, they have been doing that type of stuff for Red Sonja now. They have been doing that stuff for certain characters that they annex as of right now. Lady Death had her moments. Now, this one doesn't necessarily get into that whole sexy aspect of it, but yeah, there have been lingerie issues. There have been things where books have been sold for Lady Death based upon sexuality. It is what it is. Yeah, my problem with Black Starfire was that they made her look like a stereotype and not made her look cheap. I will give you that. I will give you that. But the thing about it, when I watched the series in its context, it's like she was an alien that just doesn't understand Earth. And the first person that she came across was a gangster a gangster that's like, oh, you're pretty, this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. Here's this, dress like this, you can have that. And for somebody like that, it's like, you just don't know any better. But again, blame the creative staff, blame the writers, blame the showrunners for that. Your critique about Starfire for the Titans TV series had nothing to do with her ethnicity. It had everything to do with the writing. And that's where that's where I'm coming from when I said that TNA leads to laziness. You're allowing the sexuality of a particular character drive more than what is needed to tell a good story. Yes, why you don't buy Dynamite Red Sonja. I understand that. And I stopped buying Dynamite Red Sonja back in like volume 3. And you'd be surprised. It's like I got through all of volume 1. I got through all of the dang it, now I can't even call her name. Gail Simone. I got through all of Gail Simone Red Sonja from Dynamite. I got through all of Queen Sonja. And then I stopped because I was seeing more and more of the TNA type covers and less good story. And then that was about the time that Dynamite started to re-releasing some of the older stories from Marvel. And that was just kind of weird. Oh, I have a few issues of Tarot with Witch of the Black Rose. Had tons of nudity, but but again, that book Tarot was really focused more on the magic aspect of those characters. Yes, Bullet knows how to draw a certain type of woman, and he makes certain that those type of women gets featured in those stories. But there, and this is one of the things that's weird about Tarot. You got a group of collectors for Tarot that just buys it for the art itself. And then we got people like yourself who goes in full bore for that story. It's kind of like what Tori was saying. No, if you said it earlier about the ones that buy it just for the simple fact that it's TNA, and then the other ones that's buying it because it has substance. You're the one that's buy it because it has substance. Now, I had met him only once in my career, and he's a good guy, and he did a lot of volume 2 of Catwoman. Matter of fact, he did issue 1 to what? I forgot what issue that he stopped doing the interiors, but he pretty much did all the covers almost all the way through the end. But that's the difference. The substance has to be there for it to be validated. Or else, why not just do what this guy did? Just create an art book. Like I said, I got duped into this because it was like, oh, it's limited edition Wonder Woman. And that's how they was advertising. It was a limited edition Wonder Woman exclusive. Not saying that whose art book it was. They was doing it as an exclusive. It's like, it wasn't telling anybody what issue it was. It was just like, it's a Wonder Woman exclusive. If you've been following us, this, that, and yada, you know that all of our exclusives are legit. We got it in the metal, yada, 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 yada. And then we got, the limited edition ultra sexy one. So yeah, I got duped, but it is what it is. And then Tori is saying, yeah, you and I both bounced a little time. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, we bounced at the same time because at that time frame, I'm getting to see it move from the Lucio Perillo doing like the old school medieval type art to more of the fancier pinup type art for the covers. And when it started moving that way, it's like, this isn't Red Sonja anymore. We're moving away from the Frazetta-like covers. We're moving away from the aspect of the fact that, she's not supposed to be bedding and all this other stuff here. You're making her more and more sexy because it was selling you more and more books. You're creating, instead of the 3 or 4 covers, now Red Sonja had 12 covers for each issue. All of that started moving the goalpost further away from me staying with the Dynamite run. Now, mind you, I got odds and end books here. I think I got like issue 1 of Invincible Red Sonja and a couple other hit or miss here. And then I still shake an angry fist at Red Sita, a series that shouldn't have been canceled the way that it did. And the reason it got canceled because they wanted to keep Red Sonja the way that it is. And then what was the other Sonja book here? Samurai? No, it wasn't Samurai Sonja. maybe it was Samurai Sonya, the Asian version of Red Sonya came out, and it was very popular, and they was running with that because people were eating up all the TNA covers for that like candy. But the better told story in Red Sita fell to the wayside. But that goes back to what I was saying about nationality. Dynamite found a way to make see, I'm not, is it really Samurai Sonya? I believe it is Samurai Sonya. They made a way for Samurai Sonya to work, but then the better story in Red Sita couldn't be promoted. It fell by the wayside. Could they go back to it? Probably. But then again, we have to now wait and see what happens because of whatever happened with Diamond and their bankroll, and if they could meet payroll and all this other stuff. They got their hands tied. Dynamite got their hands tied at that point. But all that to say that it is one of those things that it can make and break who reads your book one way or the other, especially when you have lore. If the lore does not dictate TNA and you start doing a whole bunch of TNA type stuff to get people to buy into it, you have to wonder, it's like, are they really buying it for the cover, or are they really buying it for the story? Like I said, art versus substance. Tarot works because it actually has substance and it satisfies those who just want it for the artwork. It is what it is. And there's Aaron. I'm not certain how much you caught here, Aaron, but we're kind of midway in the discussion here because I already talked about my pet peeve and my major critique about TNA already. And we're talking about how a lot of the TNA books is really broken down into two different types of audience. One who pretty much just like it for the actual aspect of the aesthetic for the art, and those who like the books because it actually has story and substance. One of the titles that was brought up that has story and substance was Tarot Witch of the Black Rose. That actually has substance. However, books like Zombie Tramp, it is what it is. It's not meant to be taken seriously. It's just like a fun little book to read here. And we made the distinction between, why the evolution from good girl art to what we have now. So there's a lot of stuff that is there going on for that here. Oh yeah, we were talking about Dynamite as far as Red Sonja was concerned, because Tori and I was saying that we got out of Red Sonja because of what Dynamite did. And people don't understand. It's like, I own all of Volume 1 of the Dynamite run, all of Volume 2 where you had Gail Simone take over. I got all of Queen Sonya. But when it came down to Volume 3 of Red Sonja, that's when you got away from like the Fazetta like artwork to something that was more pinup like. And by the time they got to Volume 3, they were already in that mode of doing 12 different covers for Red Sonja per issue and everything. And that changes the tone. It also changes the nature of the story. It also changes the nature of the lore. So it was right there around that time where I dropped the Red Sonja. Now, that doesn't mean that I haven't picked up a Red Sonja book since. I was like, here and there, I would pick up one and just be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let me go ahead and read it and see if I like it. Red Sita, surprisingly enough, and you know how I feel about Red Sita. If it wasn't for Samurai Sonya and something else that they was doing in the main Red Sonja series, Red Sita would still be around today. I really wish they would have stuck it out with Red Sita, but no. They were making too much money on Samurai Sonia, where they dropped Red Sita. And that comes back, like I said, it came back to my major criticism about TNA and nationality. You put both of them out there, and one outsold the other one. So as a business, I get it. We're going to give you more of what is selling like hotcakes. But the better story was the one that they canned. But it is what it is here. Yeah, I was mad. I sold all of my Red Sonjas that wasn't Marvel. Wow. I still got all of my early Dynamite ones. And during that time back in the early 2000s, I was a somewhat of a Gail Simone fan. So when she took over Red Sonja, it was like, okay, this is a different take on it. Not exactly what I would like, but it's a different take that was pretty good. Yeah, the pinup stuff like Cheesecake, a little goes a long way for me. And surprisingly enough, for some people, that's not the case. That's not always the case here. And that was one of the things that we was talking, and it was brought up in Instagram. And you saw it. You actually saw it, Aaron. We was talking about, how good girl art, such as Dave Stevens stuff. This is not overly sexy because, again, it still highlights the fact that Johnny Quest and Haji and Bandit are still on a mission here, and they have like a, kind of like a female character that's with them here. And yes, it's a Dave Stevens drawn girl and all this other stuff, good girl art in that aspect here. And then, AC Comics has like their good girl art quarterly dealing with their film force and everything. And this is Garganta with Too Tall Tara, and I believe that is Sin. But again, they also highlight that there was some other evil that's there. So it's not really, drawing into like the overly sexy pin-up-y type stuff, like how I was saying with Deja Doris. And Deja Doris is a lot deeper of a character than what is being drawn on this cover. This cover is just saying, "Oh, look at me! I'm so sexy. Look at me! I'm so sexy and innocent." That can throw off what's inside of the book. It might catch your eye and be like, "Oh, she's pretty," but it doesn't necessarily tell you what the series is about or what to expect on the inside of the book here. Give us a little bit more here. And then Aaron saying, yeah, Dave Stevens has a certain style to that, and that's appealing. Actually, I don't care too much for Dave Stevens stuff. That's what baffles me about Dave Stevens. His women, to me, were drawn periodically. For that time frame, in that day and age that he was doing the stories in, it fit well. But on average, they weren't what I consider pinup drawings. They weren't considered sexy in that aspect here. Good girl art, yes. It wasn't, something that I would say is like, oh wow, that was a greatly drawn woman. To me, it's like, oh, that's an interesting story. It's like the stuff with like Alien Worlds. It's like, oh, that's an interesting space story. It looks like, that's kind of weird. It's like, is she playing with a space rocket toy, or is that really, something going in? I'm talking about Alien Worlds 3D issue #1. He did that one. There was a couple of Alien Worlds that he did, and a couple others. Like I said, I just so happened to be able to get that Johnny Quest for like, I think it's like $35. I can't beat that with a stick here. But, as many times I have read The Rocketeer, I never felt that the women characters in the Rocketeer was sexy in any way. You know, they were never drawn pin-up-y in any way. And that's kind of like the thing here. It's like that separation. The reason why I'm leaning more towards that TNA gets into the lazy aspect of storytelling, because this does not really tell you how deep this character goes in the lore of John Carter and why she has her own book. The lore behind what's going on in Mars dealing with Dejah Thoris goes a lot deeper than what most people deal with here. But again, pinup covers does not tell you what's inside of the book. It doesn't. It might sell people on the sexuality. It's like, oh, she's pretty, and that might be good enough to get some people. But if you are into the substance of the story, it's a hard sell. It's a very hard sell. And again, I made mention about, this is Vampirella Strikes #1. This is the photo cover. And then they did, a lot of photo covers of this, that, and the other. And one of the things that I noticed between when they went from the magazine format to the comic book format, when they went to the comic book format here, every so often they do, every once in a while, a pin-up-y type cover to get people interested because, oh, Vampirella looks sexy. But back in the magazine days, it really wasn't about her being in a pin-up pose. It was more about what she was doing in the scene that made the scene important to why you want to pick up that book to read it. This tells me nothing about the story. This is just like, oh, there's somebody cosplaying as Vampirella. It is what it is. Unlike this one here. This one here, it's like, oh, is her costume shredding? What's going on with the costume? It looks like, bats and stuff is forming around her, maybe forming the costume and everything. This has a little bit more substance to it to kind of make you wonder, it's like, well, what's going on here in this scene right here, as opposed to the other one. And again, we, like I said, I picked on Lady Death for a bit here because, Lady Death is known for having her lingerie issues and everything like that. But even in this one, even though, it's kind of pin-up-y about how she's posed here, but at least you can see that she's kind of being like a puppet on a string, possibly by Purgatory. So it makes a major difference substance-wise to get you into the story. Even here, she's holding a kind of, and even though the way that she's holding it may not be the best, but at least she's wielding a sword. It looks like she's about to get ready to go into some type of battle. It's not look at me, I'm pretty type deal. Aaron is saying, I receive a lot of comics from friends. He only wants DC, so we trade, and I receive some Dynamites I will get rid of somehow. So you kind of see the same problem with how they promote their books then. Because there's a lot of good stories that Dynamite do tell with some of their IPs, but you could never tell based upon the cover. Okay, there was a hello there. Oh, sorry, it is. Okay, so he was just explaining to somebody else in the chat why he didn't say hi. But getting back to what he said about Dynamite, he's trying to get rid of all his Dynamite books. And that's part of the problem with the TNA type covers or the TNA type aspect of selling. A lot of people may miss good story because you're presenting something that doesn't reflect on the book. This is one of the reasons why, if, and this is me in my publisher's mind at this point, if I was over a bigger company and people want to do TNA type stuff, I was like, you know what? Make the TNA stuff type of stuff for store exclusives. Like if a store wants something that's more TNA because they have a lot of people that buy a lot of TNA books, guess what? We have a cover there for you. We'll make that a store exclusive. You could come to us. You could come to us. We get the artists. We do whatever we need to do. We make so many many of them, and you have them. But that would not be something that we will go through like a Diamond or through a Comixology or through somebody else to make it like a standard everyday copy of that issue here. It is what it is here. See, you're kind of like a man after my own heart and a person after Tori's heart, because we're kind of like the same way when it comes to that here. And it's not the fact that Red Sonja from Dynamite was bad. The first 2 volumes were actually good when they stuck to the guns to do Red Sonja the way Red Sonja is supposed to be. By the time they got to volume 3, that's when they was going gung-ho on the TNA type covers, which threw everybody else off. And by the time they got to volume 3, it was pin-uppy covers all the time. They got rid of the Lucio Perillo type stuff. They got rid of the Frazetta like covers, and they went more of a pin-uppy. It took away from the enjoyment of picking up a Red Sonja book starting in volume 3. But it is what it is. Vampirella as well, not in the overall series, but the bloodletting is gross to me. Okay. I will admit to that. They did get kind of gory with Vampirella. And I do have a lot of Vampirella, surprisingly enough, from Dynamite. I don't have as much from Harris like I thought I did, because I thought I had more Harris than Dynamite, but after going to storage and going through the books, I was like, oh well, I did not know that I had that many Dynamite version of Vampirella. Dynamite eventually started bad. She had PTSD and was seeing it's like, yeah, because again, they made her ultra violent. That was the reason for her PTSD, because they made the book ultra violent. The original Harris stuff was not that violent. Nowhere close to that violent. And one scene that had her name being Vampirella in the language of both different budding of English and everything, and yodel and wet farts. Yeah, I was like, gee, why is no one buying modern comics? Well, that could be a topic for another episode here, because I have a lot of stuff to say about why people are not buying modern comics. But part of that is going into the whole audience thing again, and the fact that reading is a lost art. Not everybody reads as much, and if they do read, they'd rather do it digitally. That's the reason why they have things like Kindles and stuff now. Holding a book is not the cool thing to do. Like, she made me skip his comment. Yeah, I meant over sexual plus the bloodletting. Yeah, okay. No, it's like when people start talking about over sexual, I get to that point as far as not something over. I get to the point of going to the fact that to each their own as far as what is over the top. But I get the idea of bloodletting. It's like that was going very over the top in the Dynamite series from the very beginning here. Aaron Reed Terrell, Witch of the Black Rose 65, The Last Mermaid. 2-part story, 2 parts, fantastic story. Yeah, that's her, you know, like I said, Tarot is her jam. Tarot is her jam here. But she liked Jim Ballant a lot. And I like Jim Ballant mainly because of Catwoman Volume 2. Did I like Tarot? Not so much, but it had substance. It was something different, but I'm not into that genre of story dealing with magic and understanding the nature of magic in that aspect here. Yeah, I'm sure some stories were good, but I hear Dynamite stories in general are getting better. Dynamite stories are getting better because of the IPs that they have now. Not necessarily for the stuff that they had for the longest time. So it's like I wouldn't say that Vampirella or the Red Sonja has gotten better, but when you get like Disney IPs and Hanna-Barbera IPs and all these well-known IPs, you cannot come half cock on those. You have to come out the gate being great, or people going to tell you about it. People going to tell you about it. Like I said before, I did the Darkwing Duck series for Dynamite. It was pretty good. It was pretty good, even though I didn't like the aspect that I didn't like about the Darkwing Duck was the fact that they kind of went back more towards Disney Afternoon Darkwing Duck to where he really left off in his series from like a few years back. And then they did like Justice Ducks and Negaduck and a couple other minor series here. And then they did the whole Disney villains run. So you had things like Maleficent and Hades and Scar. And then now you got things like Space Ghost and stuff like that that's up under their titles here. I know exactly where you were going with this. Remember, I have at least 2 or 3 different volumes of Vampirella. Like I said, that's another series that I bought and I stopped. There was a reason why I stopped. It got to the point where it became more or less being sold on the sexuality of Vampirella as opposed to the substance of the story of what she was. It was no longer what Harris Publishing was doing in the very beginning. You know, I'm not saying that it wasn't gross. It's like, yeah, it got gory. A lot of stuff that happened got gory quickly. Now, some of the team up books, that goriness was still kind of there, especially with Vampirella and the superpowers. That got interesting, but weird. And it definitely would not be your type of book, Aaron. It definitely would not be your type of book. If you don't like what they was doing in the beginnings of the Dynamite Vampirella, what they was doing by the time they got to Vampirella and the superpowers. Yeah. But like I said, they're telling those stories with a little bit more violent nature behind it. And it's just like, yeah, this is not exactly the same thing here. Yeah, I stopped with Vampirella after the Falling in Love. Oh, don't bring up bad memories, please. You brought up some bad memories. Oh no. Yeah, that did happen. People, that did happen in Vampirella. They pulled a Avengers 200 in Vampirella. If you don't know what Avengers 200 is, I suggest You don't read it. Why? Because the writers and creators of Avengers 200 said that it was the worst Avengers comic ever written. If you don't believe me, just ask Parallax. Yes, that did happen. That did happen. They pulled the Avengers 200 in Vampirella. That actually did happen. I am not kidding you. I am not kidding you. They pulled the Avengers 200. See, stuff like that, I let go. I just like, you know what? We just don't speak of that issue again until people just bring it back to my mind. And like, no. There's things that can't be unseen. That was something that cannot be unseen. So the best way you deal with it is just don't bring it up. And again, nobody had a campaign back then in the early 2000s. It's like, oh, why are they writing about something like that? That's just so disgusting. No, they're up here worried about more along the lines of Milo Manera doing a Spider-Woman cover with her ass in the air, which is a, if I could say, a accurate, atomically correct pose that both male and female can do. But because it was female, they're up here like, it's too sexual. You can't be selling that to comics and this, that, and the other. It's like, but yet you got stories like that happen. And crickets. Nobody talks about it. Nobody's going to the press about how just disturbing that was. But I let it alone. I leave it alone here. I leave that aspect alone here. So, yep. Thank you, Kirby, for bringing that back to my memory, which I really didn't want to have brought back. And thank you for bringing back Avengers 200, which is also another story that I didn't want to come back to my mind. No, but it proves the point about how sometimes stuff being sold using TNA takes away from the substance of the content that's in the book. I still want the Spider-Woman book. Which Spider-Woman book? Which volume of Spider-Woman? Which volume of Spider-Woman are we talking about? And I believe a good friend of the show had also soured me on one other thing that had happened. This unrelated to TNA stuff here. If rumor has it, this volume of Storm is going to end in issue number 12. So I shake another angry fist at Marvel. Reason I shake another angry fist at Marvel is because, you know, when you have a good thing going, you let it go, but you know, you never know. They might just reboot the whole series again, which again they're up here like, we're going to reboot the series and get more people into it. Not necessarily. You're just probably going to either anger the people who like what they've been reading and try to figure out a way to goat them to come over to the next volume of the book, or you're just going to lose people as a whole here. But that's just the nature of the book here. The band one I thought was pretty. What band Spider-Woman book? Yeah, Magic is ending at 10. And yeah, and you're mad about that. Magic, I know that was ending at 10, but rumor has it that's ending in issue 12. And I was mad. I'm actually quite mad at Marvel about that as a whole here. And to prove my point about TNA, since we're going to go there, none of this is really TNA type stuff. All of this is kind of like action stuff and everything like that. Nothing overly pin-up-y. You know, for like this is only 6 issues here. I do have more, but none of this is pin-up-y type stuff. Unlike Deja Torres and Vampirella and all the other stuff here. Now, Catwoman, this is a little bit of a different story here, but it serves a purpose. You know, this is, you know, issue 60. I'm starting with issue number 69. You got like the Cho sitting in a chair aspect here, and then we go back to like the A covers and stuff like that. But even this, it's like she's sitting in a tub and she's all cut up and everything, and it's not like she's there. It's not like she's there trying to be all sexy, and then they got somebody behind her about to get ready to try to kill her. She kind of figured out that she knows that somebody's there. And again, this is not a pin-up type pose. It's like she got people reaching up to her and she's trying to keep away from them. And then, you know, it's her hanging upside down about to break into somebody's apartment here. And then you got the Shattered Mind type aspect of the cover. But that's the only really kind of like TNA cover that's there. But at least it tells a story that she's sitting in a chair surrounded by cats, you know, thinking about something. Does it necessarily sell the issue? Probably not. Probably not, but it is what it is here. The real one, I am guessing. Oh yeah, the Milo Manera one. The Milo Manera one, I still want to get one. So if I do come across, let's say maybe anywhere between $300 to $1,500, I might actually just go ahead and just grab whatever slab version of that is available, because I truly believe that book should have never been banned, or at least never have been pulled off the shelf in that aspect. I mean, I have seen during that era of the 2000s, we have seen a lot of weirdness when it comes to comics and how people felt about it here. And it looks like Kirby is saying something about She has done it well over the years, and the new series is focusing on her daughter Hayako, who is doing a good job on taking up her reins. But that's the whole thing about she's appeal was dealing with the whole, you know, being a deadly assassin, but still being up under the geisha like aspect of the tradition. So yeah, you had a lot of, if I could say, you know, pinup like covers, but those pinup like covers go back to the tradition that her character was from. It leads back into what the story could contain. It's not like with Dynamite and how they did Deja Torres or Red Sonja or Vampirella or some of the other female characters that they had here. And that's where it gets into, like I said, that to me is that laziness here. This does not tell me what's truly in the content of the story. Unless you know who Deja Torres is, this does not really say, oh yeah, go ahead, this is an interesting story, you need to read it. This is more like, oh, that's nice and pretty, and pass on by in most cases. However, with, like you said, with she gives you that little bit of glimmer into what's really going on. It's like, yeah, it's a pretty face, but there might be like a trickle of blood that's coming down her face, or there would be something in the background that looks out of place, or, you know, she might have like her hand right behind her hair as if she's about to get ready to pull something out. There's always some type of element that's in that cover that gives you some type of aspect of what's going on inside the story. And like I said, I'm not saying that TNA books or TNA covers are bad. I'm not saying that as a whole. I'm just saying that there's a group that loves it, and there's another group of us that requires substance behind it. We have to have something of substance for it to be worthwhile for us. So, that's kind of like the thing that really sticks out. And then, like I said, my major critique still holds true about nationality. Dynamite kind of sort of proved my point with Samurai Sonya. Because again, you had Red Sonja that was still being published here. They came out with, well, actually, they had whatchamacallit, Unbreakable Red Sonja that came out at the same time as Samurai Sonya, at the same time as Red Sita. 3 books. Unbreakable had TNA covers. Samurai Sonya had them, and so did Red Sita. Red Sita got canceled. Even though it was a better story, it got canceled. And the only reason it got canceled because Samurai Sonya, I had to make certain because I didn't want the middle finger to come up and be like, I'm not telling my audience F you. So I had to kind of like make it in such a way to like, because Samurai Sonya started out selling all of them combined. Now, a lot of people said that it was a great story, but I believe there was more because of the covers. But it proved my point about nationality because Unbreakable Red Sonja was not doing well at all. Unnatural issue 5 had a regular cover that had the nymphs, and I was surprised to see it on the stands with the regular without the polybag. Yeah, some things could get through censors here. Samurai Immortal, Red Sonja all ran concurrently with Red Sita and ruined it. Yep. And that's like I said, that's my greatest criticism here. And if it wasn't for the appeal of Samurai Sonya probably would have went the same way that Red Sita did. But when you see a lot of the TNA type stuff, you don't see a lot of other nationalities here. We, like I said, we always getting Rocky Road. We always getting Rocky Road ice cream, but we're not getting our butter pecan or our pralines and cream or our Neapolitan or mint chocolate chip. Give us different flavors. Even if that, give us also different body types on top of that too. I mean, everybody is not all the same here, and it's like on top of that, they drop all on the same day. Yep, exactly. Yep. Oh, and thank you again. Now I'm angry again because you made me think about the other thing about TNA type stuff that pissed me off about Red Sita. You guys want to know what that is? Samurai Sonya, they had a person cosplaying as Samurai Sonya. For all the Red Sonja books, they have people cosplaying as Red Sonja. For Red Sita, they did a cosplay book that they had somebody playing Red Sonja in Red Sita for the Red Sita cover. I was mad. I was pissed. That's like, where's the Red Sita cosplay? That's Red Sonja. That's not Sita. Where's Red Sonja? That's Red Sonja. Give me Red Sita. Why is the cosplay cover for Red Sita Red Sonja? It blew my mind. It blew my mind. And then Aaron says, it's like someone in Sandman Mystery Theater Instagram chat answers, yeah. And I quote, from Brucifer. I mean, Bruce. Okay, so I actually, should I go out there? Is it safe to actually view live on the chat if I pull it up here? Because I would have preferred that they actually made themselves known and come out here on the live stream and actually chatted with me, because it makes for interesting conversation here. It does make for interesting conversation. So here we go. Unfortunately, I can't turn off the person's name. So Bruce, if you're there, please forgive me. I can't. It's too late for me to be able to turn off your name and everything here. But from what I can see so far, it looks like you got a good comment here. But we're about to talk about it. This is what Bruce is saying here. Let me do it like this. It's like, personally, yes, when sex is objectified, it doesn't advance the storyteller, or when used as an activity crush, or allows for the sexist racist characterization. The famous Fritz the Cat. Oh, okay. That's a pretty good example. No, that's a pretty good example. And for those who haven't watched the Fritz the Cat animation, you might want to go see it to understand that reference here. It's the best and worst example of it. So close to the edge of naivety of the naivety of the time period excuses aspects of it. In my opinion, to use the sexiest, freest example I could think of, the original art in the movie A Heavy Metal refers to refers and has balance. Stop typing, Aaron. I reading his comment. You just like pop it up, pop it up, pop it up, pop it up, pop it up. I know what you're doing here, but it's like the original art and movie Heavy Metal refers and has a balance betwixt the sexuality and the storytelling aspect in a fantasy medium. Again, might follow the subjective views of others, might not share, but it boils down in the end of what defines art to one another. And that's a very excellent point. Like I was stating before here, and I agree with Bruce here. There has to be some type of substance behind the storytelling to make it work. You cannot just, and I always go back, I'm coming back to, and I'm not picking on Deja Torres as a character. What I am picking on is this cover tells us nothing what's really going to happen in the story. It's just something to be like, oh, that's nice and pretty and this, that, and the other. It does not have any subjectivity as far as what is going to happen in this book or dealing with the story behind Deja Torres, especially since it is a #1 issue. For people who do not know who this character is, it is like, oh, she looks pretty. She might just be like, oh, this might be a TNA book. This might be a Barbie type book. She might just be like just a pretty face and this, that, and the other, and not being known as a Princess of Mars type deal. It falls flat. It comes back to what Bruce was saying about Fritz the Cat, about a lot of the sexuality that was in Fritz the Cat that came off as he said, naivety, but it comes off as a little bit like, the love crazy girl. But the thing about it is the animal that they use for the love crazy girl and the personification of her color and her body type was overemphasized. It no longer was art in that aspect. It was criticism. And because it was criticism, I agree. It was the best and worst. It was the best and worst example of it. The only other example is like if Bruce is here watching it, or if he watch it at a later date. The only other example that I could think of like that here, if you ever watch the movie Coonskin and you talk about Miss America, there were several scenes dealing with Miss America and the one guy from from the African American community, talking about, dealing with Miss America, and Miss America was always trying to seduce him into doing all this different stuff. And it got to the part where eventually, they got to the point where things happen, and the last line after everything was said and done is like, oh, I ended up getting the clap. And people didn't get it right then and there about the commentary, because it was not done well storytelling wise, because of the way that it was told, that way that everything was set up and everything. It was satire, but it was satire told in such a way where it wasn't good storytelling. It was just dramatized and overemphasized that bad thing was going to happen regardless here. But that was that was a very good example, and I'm glad that he commented on that here. I kind of wish that he was live for he could continue that dialogue here. But it is what it is here. Yeah, I know, because it's like I was reading it on the screen while you kept typing and kept typing and kept typing. Das my horn. Das my horn. I guess that's what I started saying. Deja Thoris. Das my horn. Okay, that's Brucifer. Okay. So yeah, so Brucifer, I'm glad that you did make a comment there, and I agree. There got to be some type of substance there to make it worthwhile. And a lot of times, like I said, I'm not saying that books like Zombie Tramp shouldn't be published. No, it should be, because it's lighthearted, it's funny, but it's just not the type of story that interests me. Okay. Doggy horn. Okay. I don't know what you say. Not Bruce. Okay. This is Bruce. Okay. So Bruce, hopefully if he watches this, he thanks for the comment. I agree wholeheartedly as far as that is concerned. But getting back to what I was saying just a second ago here, it has to have some type of substance behind it. Like Zombie Tramp is a light-hearted story, but it is really predicated on the fact that it's dealing with the sexuality of a bimbo zombie. It's not what I consider a bad or incorrect use of art, but it also, like I said, it would just be left to the subjectivity of the reader. Should it be on the same shelf as other books? Sure, why not? But it always has an audience. It has its own audience, so let the audience have what they want. Yeah, great comment. Yeah, comment. Yeah, for both you. Yep. And like I said, I agree, because he brought up. I probably would have never went with Fritz the Cat, but since he brought up that scene, it's like, yeah, that scene can be taken very offensively. The same thing in Coonskin. It could have been taken offensively, but it's not. But it's not, because it's satire. It's almost like if you told the story of Paul Bunyan today. There's going to be some things that is left for satire and exaggeration to make the story worthwhile. Same thing with Coonskin, because that satire was on the extreme end of it. And it made sense that the character Miss America was not really a female character. It was talking about the nation as a whole. And that was the whole thing, the whole joke about the African American getting the clap at the very end. After it was all said and done, he ended up getting a venereal disease from the country. It was just like, oh, that joke was okay. It makes sense, but it was just told in poor taste. A lot. Some people, the joke would have flew over their head, but other people would have gotten offended by it. But then again, that was the nature of a lot of Ralph Bakši's type stuff. Especially the weird type stuff, the more psychedelic, and everything to that magnitude. Because Coonskin telling about the tales of Brer Rabbit. Let's just say there's certain aspect of that movie that really played heavily on stereotypes. I mean, really leaned into them. Extremely leaned into them. Was it a bad movie? No. Would it be passable for people of today? No. If it was left up to a lot of people from that's of the later generations, it may have been pushed more towards the band, or we need an advisory notice on the top of it, because of the simple fact of the nature of the topics of race and everything to that magnitude, race and nationality, because it didn't lean into it very hard, but it was very stereotyped. And for the fact that it was part live action and part animated, it kind of made it seem like, it's like, yeah, this will have like that advisory notice here. If they could ban things like Song of the South and put advisory notices on things like Gone with the Wind, this would definitely be one of those movies that has that here. Yeah, bad taste is bad taste is just that. That joke had a purpose, but the scene did it in such a way where it could be taken in very bad taste and get very offensive. Some people would look at it and laugh at it, because it is kind of hilarious about how it happened, if you understand the symbolism behind it. But other people would get offended by it, because Miss America, being the nationality that she is, and the African American guy, after the back and forth, because it's not just one scene. It's like they would cut to like scenes dealing with Brer Rabbit, dealing with what he's going through, and then they would go back and talk about the conditions of African Americans in America. And that's the whole thing about, the comparison about Miss America and everything. It's like the guy's talking to Miss America, and Miss America would be asking him, it's like, hey, why don't you just do this, and this for me, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, and it'll be like a quick quip, and then we'll move on to the story. And those quick quips leads up to that one scene where eventually he gives in. And we saw what happens if he actually gave in. It was in poor taste in a lot of aspects of it, but it made for a commentary that was of such that was sarcastic and satirish. Not to change the subject, but I will be watching Superman tomorrow. Okay, cool. I will be looking forward to see if it gets your yay or nay. I know certain other people, especially a certain young one certain two young ones that are watching this show, is probably begging people over there to spend an absurd amount of money for they could go see Crypto. And I mean, where they're at, it's an absurd amount of money. For what they pay for one ticket to go to the movie, or one adult ticket to go to the movies there, it's equivalent to like a meal at a nice dining establishment where I'm at. Yeah, Song of the South and Gone with the Wind are both great. Yeah. And then Crypto. Yeah, they are great movies when you put it in its proper context. And like I said, the younger generations today have a problem with context. And it's surprisingly enough, it's almost like it's like, how can I put this? And I say all people in the younger generation, I would say some in the younger generations here take things way too literally. If something was say in jest that seems like a tinge racist, it's like, oh, that's racist. Like, no, I could actually show you what would be considered racist. There are certain things that may seem one way, but it really isn't, not because of the context of what it was done. That was one of the reasons why comedians were having a big hard time within like the last 15 to 20 years, because everybody was taking things too literally. That was one of the reasons why I was glad that Dave Chappelle did the comedy special that he did, and we actually got to see the individual that encouraged him to go ahead and continue on, because of the simple fact that even with comedy normally makes commentary about the current state of living, and it does it in such a way where it's not being said, things are not being said in mean spirited and in a aspect of stereotypical truth. It's more along the lines of like, hey, isn't this ironic that this is happening here, and people would think this, and this. You can't think of it in the same terms of, oh, that's sexist or that's racist or that's homophobic or anything like that. It's a commentary about the current state of living. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the context that you got to take it in. But too many people want to take things literally. And because it's being taken literally, people get offended. And that's just the way that it is here. You said you doggy. You said you doggy horn. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. There's an old saying here, and maybe this is not appropriate here, and maybe it is, but I'm going to say it anyway, because we're in a day and age where a lot of people are getting very, very, very book smart, but they're not getting a lot of common sense. That's the reason why I said it's not. And that's the reason why I don't feel that the younger generation is stupid as fuck. I just believe that common sense is just not there. Common sense is not common anymore, and it's nowhere near common when it comes to the younger generation, because their generation never experienced a lot of the stuff that the older generation have. So they have no frame of reference whatsoever for them to have a common view to understand why this is okay and that's not okay. They're stuck with taking things very literal. And again, that happens when you get shielded from a lot of stuff. The younger generation has been shielded and sheltered from a lot of things here. Yeah, we'll take the place in 1886, not last week. Yeah, I would lead the Superman experts to the very high for, hopefully they portray him right though. Yeah, that's the best way I would put it. It's like, go there, enjoy the movie. Don't go there trying to find faults with, oh, did they portray Superman right? Was he better than Henry Cavill? This, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, go and enjoy the movie. Sometimes you gotta divorce a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie from the comic books. Just like how I did Ezra Miller's Flash. Oh my goodness. When I first time I watched it, I was like, this is some bull. This is some straight bull. Then when I went back and rewatched it and separated myself from what I know about the Flash, I was like, okay, it was an okay movie, but it does have these problems, and I could talk about the problems with the movie without saying that, oh, they did this wrong and they did that wrong and blah 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 blah. And to be quite honest, if it wasn't for our reprisal of Batman, that movie would have fallen by the wayside as one of the worst movies ever. But it was kind of salvaged to have Michael Keaton Batman back, especially as an older Batman, a Batman who lost his way. It was okay to have, Kara there the way that she was, and the fact of how it's like, oh yeah, oh that's Uncle Zod. I could go and talk to Uncle Zod and see why he's evading this, that, and the other. She goes and finds out what he was trying to do and everything. It's like, nope, I'm going to fight for your guy. I'm going to fight with you guys now. Oh, I sent you a doggy horn video. Okay, I will watch that. That's that's my horn. Yeah, Superman fine, not moody emo. It's like it's not moody emo piss off Superman like they forced poor Cavill to be. That's the way I felt that he was in Justice League. It's like they brought him back for the dead. I was like, you should be kind of thankful that you're alive and you just come back and it's like I'm about to beat the crap out of all of y'all for bringing me back. I was at peace. It's like, no, stop doing that. No, he wasn't, but that's a good thing. That was the good thing. Clooney Batman was at the very end, so I was okay with that. But if Clooney Batman was in the middle of that movie, I was like, no, the movie was ruined. Michael Keaton Batman actually made that make sense. It actually helped tell the story of Flash a little bit better because at the point that he comes into play, where it was no longer Ben Affleck, he kind of becomes like the narrator. Is like, I see what you're saying. I get where you're going at, but nah, we're not going into battle just half cocked. We got to have some type of plan, or else I'm not going at all. And I'm paraphrasing because that's not the exact words that he said, because pretty much he told him in the very beginning to piss off in the very beginning until he saw what was really going down. And he was like, oh, he was like, oh, we damned if we do or we damned if we don't. And then when he looked at it from that aspect, it's like, okay, fine, I'm in. The actress was good as Supergirl, but she looks like she started crying every fucking second. Again, it's like she was buried underground. It's like she got above ground. She was like, son, like this stuff hurts, but yet it doesn't hurt. Okay, I take off now. Like, huh? And then every time she wanted to talk, it's like, yeah, she kind of like had that moment where it's like she pauses. It's like, yeah, she could have started crying. Zack Snyder sucks. Me too. It was a fun cameo. It was a very fun cameo because it's like, yeah, I'm back in my timeline. It's no more movie Flashpoint, this, that, and the other. Did. Oh yeah, I've been looking for you. And we get George Clooney. I'm like, no. But that it was like the movie could have been done a lot better. It could have been done a lot better. I didn't like the solution that they had as far as how to resolve everything. But it was a weird version of how to tell a version of Flashpoint. a very real version of it. And then him seeing himself, him seeing his younger self and telling him how to be the Flash. Because he couldn't get back to his own time because he lost his power. that was messed up too. Yeah, that's people don't realize, or at least actors don't realize, what you do outside of your role plays a major factor in whether or not the movie is successful or not. He's a very bad person. The same thing could be said about who would be nameless for Captain Marvel. Because if she would have said what she said, I believe people would have kind of gave in and let it go for the Marvel movie. But nope. But fortunately, the actress who played Kamala and the actress that played Monica did what they did to make it palatable for a lot of people. And it's like, I thought The Flash was all right. I didn't rewatch it though. Oh my goodness. Parallax could tell you, because I watched it and I had to stop and message her several times. It's like, what in the world of everything did they do to this movie? Because this really wasn't the Flash at all. It really wasn't a good version of the Flash. And like I said, I had to literally turn my Flash brain, what I know about the Flash, off. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, I do own a lot of Flash comic books. So when it comes to like Barry Allen and why am I thinking? It's like, dang it. That's like I'm about to say Randy West, but it's like, no, that's a game show announcer. But the Flash that came after Barry Allen, something West, I know a lot about him. Why is that name? Because Roy Harper was the protege of Green Arrow. West was the greatest Flash ever. And I can't even think of his first name. Wally. Yeah. Thank you. Wally was the greatest Flash ever. And I'm looking at this movie and just like, okay, what are they doing with the lore of Flash? It was just so messed up and everything. I just like, it is what it is. Yeah, like how Brie basically tanked Captain Marvel for a lot of people because she'll be like, see you next Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Flash was okay, but they massively reshot a lot more Keenan Custom. Yeah, like I said, before, Keaton kind of narrated that movie to make it more palatable. Yeah, Wally, and then like I said Roy was Red Arrow, the protege. Yep, Wally. Yeah, Wallace West. Now it's Wallace West, and I'm still mad that they killed Wally originally in continuity. The only Flash that I know of that saved a whole entire nation from a nuclear bomb because he outran it, hand carrying every person in that nation to another country in the time frame before the nuclear warhead detonated. We're talking about millions of people in less than a fraction of a second. Wally did that. And everybody's like, bury this, bury that. I was like, no, I don't care what people say. Wally is the best Flash. The best there is. He to me, he's the Bret Hart. The best there is, the best they're ever going to be. he was the best Flash. And the way that they killed him off was just like during that time frame, it's just like I was so mad. I was pissed. And I agree with Captain Cold because the person who did kill him didn't realize what was coming. And that was all because they were going to bring back Barry. And we all knew it's like, oh, if Barry finds out that one of the rogues killed Wally, that's the end of the rogues. That was so much the end of the rogues that it was beyond ridiculous. But we're getting off topic here. We kind of got a little bit off topic because we're talking about TNA type stuff here, the TNA type books. And yes, you probably won't see TNA covers on Flash or Superman. Maybe depending on if it's a Jonathan Kent book, you might see it there. Not to say that there's anything wrong with Jonathan Kent Superman. I just don't think that they've been writing it correctly. Because Jonathan Kent Superman to me should have been the next generation. And there would have been more of a struggle for him being Superman. Because now he would have to deal with multiple generations understanding what his father stood for. The whole truth, justice, and the American way is not the same thing in this day and age. But what do I know? I just write my own comics for purposes of entertaining other people. But it is what it is here. It's because it's written like crap. It really is. What we saw in Super Sons really set up what Damian and Jonathan was going to be later on in life. Damian and Jonathan was the second incarnation of the relationship that Bruce had with Kal-El, except a little bit deeper. Because they kind of grew into that true brotherhood type deal. Yeah, they're going to argue. Yeah, Damian is a lot more deadlier than Bruce ever would be. And he could be a lot more cunning on the battlefield. But when it comes down to it, that dynamic was still going to be there. But when they gave Jonathan his own book, that's where things went off the rails. They aged him up. And they just like, here, you just got your father's mantle. Deal with it. Now they're like, okay, if you got his father's mantle, the first thing that they're going to say is like, you ain't your dad. How come you didn't handle this correctly? How come you didn't handle that correctly? Oh, we need you over here, and we need you to be able to do this, and this. It's like the whole pressure of following after his dad should have been more prevalent in those books than what it was. Yeah, after they aged him up, you and your words about Wokify. that part again, that was hey, writer of the month, we're going to do this because why? We need representation. And I was like, okay, fine. He's a newer character. I could kind of give them a little bit of a pass of out of nowhere because he's a newer character per se. And he probably, grew into that because, like I said, they aged him out of nowhere. Because they aged him up out of nowhere, we don't know what other path that he would have went through outside of his conversations with Damian in Super Sons. Because in Super Sons, that stuff was never talked about. In his book, it was just like, oh, he's now, further into his life and this, that, and the other, and now he's this. Okay, the age progression bothered me a bit, but that part that you probably talked about, that caught me off guard. But it's like, you know what? As long as they don't make it a sticking point in every issue, let it rock. Let it rock. Because not everybody's really going to go out there and read, Son of Superman to find out who he's boinking. That's not the point of writing a comic book series. His sexuality doesn't play a factor unless it comes up organically. What they did was not organic at all. But if they, later on down the line, they got to a storyline where it made what was done in Shock more organic, I get it. I get it. But as a publisher, for doing editing on other books here, the first thing that I probably would have called out is like, what's the point? What's the point? Unless it's something that's happening later on down the line, why are you calling this out right here, right now? It's almost like Bobby Drake all over again. Why would he tell Jean in confidence, oh, I'm this way? Doesn't make any sense, especially since there have been decades of stories where Bobby Drake does not exhibit that behavior. It just wrong. It was just wrong. It's just out of the blue storytelling because we say so as a writer. But that goes back to having good editors and good people who can sit back and be like, no, this is not the way that you need to go. We have to stop doing things by check boxes. And when I say check boxes, I talk about, you need this type of character. Okay, we want to make such and such, check. No, that doesn't work. Make it organic. If you have to create a character, create a character. One of the biggest books that I read and I should have kept up with was New Superman, the Korean Superman. New Superman was very interesting in the very beginning, and how the government and everything was trying to set up their own Justice League. It was interesting in that aspect because when you look at, and this comes back to my criticism from earlier, when you look at the world as a whole here and look at multiple nationalities, it would make sense that a nation who have people who could have abilities to form their own version of a Justice League to deal with situations and everything, to be kind of like a national defense. That makes sense. New Superman explored that route, but yet people panned it because it was a Korean Superman, not seeing the substance of the story. But that's just the way that things are here, and that's just how the nature of creativity and everything boils down here. It just is what it is. So to kind of wrap everything up here, because we're almost getting into our second hour here, and my people on the East Coast, I'm not certain if they want to be in the future or not here, because they're about to be in Sunday, and while everybody else is on Saturday. So to sum everything up here, yeah, if you're doing TNA covers or TNA type stories without substance here, it does allow for a lot of laziness in your creation here. It just does, because your overall creation will be always subject to how pretty or how sexy that cover or how sexy the story is internally. It may not appeal to everybody. It probably will appeal to those who like that genre, and that's perfectly okay. But for those people who want more substance in their stories, where what you're showing matches up to the overall substance that is there, you might have to put a little bit more thought into it. And like I said, I wasn't picking on a lot of the books that I did, especially like I said with Deja Thoris. I wasn't picking on Deja Thoris as a character. She is a well thought out character. But as they did all these different comic book series with her as the lead character, they did a lot of pin-up and cheesecake covers that does not tell you what's inside of the book. And because they did that, those who like the pin-up type art would gravitate towards and pick it up. But your newer readers who have no idea who Deja Thoris is will pass it by because they have nothing to go off of reference-wise. But saying that to say here is that, if you like TNA books, more power to you. Keep buying them. For people like myself, you know what? I may pick up one or two every now and then, as long as the story is good. And if the story is good, I will support it. If it's not, it'll sit on the shelf. It's just that much. There's just that much of what it is here. And Aaron is saying it was a good show here. Oh, and I do want to give special thanks to Bruce there on Sandman Mystery Comics here for the comment here. I kind of wish that he was here on the show in the chat following here. I think, Aaron and Kirby and Parallax and Tori and everybody that's out there. And that's also the people that are out there that I see on my magic little number where the eyeball is at here, stating that they're watching here. I thank all of you. Why? Because this is the topic that you picked out for this week here. So the other topic that I had out here about the money trap, we'll probably talk about that next week, because I do have a couple of things to say about collecting and other things when it comes to entertainment. Because now with the way the economy is and how things are we getting into that area where everything is about to become a money trap when it comes to entertainment here? And when I say that, it's like even picking up a book, if it's not in like your local library or anything to that magnitude, if you go to like a Barnes and Noble and pick up a book, it's not going to be cheap anymore. Comics are not cheap anymore. Going to a movie theater isn't cheap. They're raising the prices on streaming. Entertainment is not getting cheaper, but we'll talk about that a little bit more next week here. So on that note, live life, grow, and be well. And we're out of here for another week here. I thank you guys for watching. If you like the content, make sure that you like and subscribe here, because we're trying to build our channel back up to where it was prior to August 4th, 2024. Which reminds me, I still got a lot of videos and stuff to download off of Facebook before I could have actual records of it, before I could put it back onto this YouTube channel, because there's a lot of older episodes from the Death of a Small Press Publisher that is worthwhile to watch, but you can't watch it anymore because I don't have the old channel anymore. But saying that to say, we're out there right now, and have a good rest of your weekend here. East Coast people, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Those who are elsewhere, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye.